Green tea. Back in September 2015, I've just come back home from a 7-week trip to Japan. I spent 4 weeks in Tokyo and afterwards 3 weeks traveling around Kyushu. And I only had one thought on my mind, and that was, well, Japan is pretty awesome. I kind of want to live there. Now, when I came home, I started researching in ways that I could possibly move to Japan in the near future. At that time I was still a student, so I was thinking maybe I could finish my studies and then afterwards move. But once I started looking up ways to move to Japan, there weren't a lot of them. The first option was a spousal visa, so if I marry a Japanese citizen, then I could move to Japan, but I wasn't really dating anyone at that time and I didn't really feel like marrying when I was 22 or 23. So that option was kind of out of the window. The other option was, well, student exchange program, but our university didn't have an exchange program of any other university in Japan, so that was kind of impossible as well. There was the option of going there on a working visa, but again, I was just finishing college and I didn't have any experience working whatsoever in any field, so the chances of me basically being hired were zero. But there was one more option, and that was the working holiday visa. The problem with the working holiday visa at that time was that it wasn't available for me because I am a Slovak citizen from Slovakia, and Slovakia at that time wasn't part of the working holiday scheme. So I just abandoned the idea, unfortunately, and I just kept going on studying, finished, started working a job. But as you might have seen in my recent video, that idea has now lived up again, and I have my working holiday visa here in my passport. Yay! I actually did go through the process of getting this working holiday visa, and I kind of wanted to share with you the entire process, my experiences, kind of some tips and tricks that I have, some stuff that I couldn't actually find online when I was looking up the instructions on how to get this visa. So I thought maybe this video would be helpful for some of you guys who are planning on going to Japan on a working holiday visa and are not quite sure about the entire process and what it takes. So let's jump right into point number 1, which are kind of the general information on the working holiday visa. So the general idea of the working holiday visa is for citizens from these countries that you can see on the screen right now. I think it's probably 20 plus at this point, to go to Japan for a maximum of 1 year for the intent of traveling primarily and working on the side. I know it's kind of weird because it's called a working holiday visa. It should be actually called a holiday working visa, but I don't know why they named it that way. But the primary intention of your travels, of your, well, stay in Japan should be travel, not work. Should, I say. I'll get to that a bit later. Now, if your home country or your country of citizenship wasn't included in the kind of screen overlay, it might be included next year, because since 2015 Japan has basically added new countries every year. I think they added like 11 or 12 new countries since then. I think the latest one was Lithuania in 2019. So if your country is not on that list, it might be in 2020 coming up with the Olympics. One country, however, that will probably not be on the list is the US. I just don't see any way that the working holiday visa is going to be between the US and Japan, especially with a certain Donald. I just don't see it happening in the near future. So if you're from the US, yeah, I'm sorry. So on the working holiday visa, there is generally an age limit that really depends on the country. I think for Slovakia it was 30 years. Some countries have a limit of 25 years. I think Ireland, I think the UK. Some countries do it for like up to 27 years. I'll link a list down below where you can actually look up each country specifically so you can see how the age limit for the working holiday visa is. Another requirement, which might not be that easy to accomplish, is money. So even though you are going to Japan to kind of work and fund your travels for work, you already need kind of a starting capital so that you are not leeching in Japan and you can actually survive the first maybe few weeks or months before you find a job, basically. So these funds really depend on the country, and it's not really a set amount. Some countries have it set to maybe $2,500 or pounds. Some countries have it set to like 4,000, but it's not really a set amount specifically. Generally, whether you get the visa granted or not does not really depend on all of the single components of your visa application process, which we'll get to in a second, but it's more of a rounded kind of picture of you through those documents. So even if one document is kind of maybe lacking or maybe is wrong or something, as long as the whole picture is kind of balanced, that's what I was told at least, you will still most likely get the visa. Now, speaking of the application process, generally the application process is mostly the same across countries. However, there are a few special requirements that differ from country to country. For example, for Slovakia, one of the special requirements more or less was that you have to have a Slovak address, so you have to actually live in Slovakia, or at least you have to be, well, on paper living in Slovakia. Some countries require a health check, so you have to go to a doctor and get a health check. But a few things that are the same are the documents that you need. Generally, for almost all of the documents that you need, you have a template that they offer. But what I would always recommend is doing your own kind of version of the template. The reason for that is that the template is very kind of limited, and it looks kind of weird if you try to do your CV in the template, for example, that they provide. Instead, I would do my own CV on a normal like CV A4 standard stuff, and then also do the template. That's what I did. I handled it in both versions. So speaking of, you're going to need a CV. A CV should include, as a standard CV, your education, your work experience, maybe some of your hobbies, your address, stuff like that. They have a template for that. I'll link to that down below so you can download the template. But I would also just do a CV normally. You will need a CV most likely anyways in Japan, so just do a CV and you can also use it in Japan and also for the application process. Now the second thing that you will need is a detailed itinerary, that's what it was. Basically a plan of what you will do in Japan for the next 12 months. And when I say detailed, I mean basically writing down not everything that you want to do, so you don't have to do a day-by-day itinerary of what you want to see or where you're gonna go, but it should be at least some thought put into it, and kind of it should show that you did some research on Japan and that you have interest in travel in the country. What I did was basically putting down 7 or 8 places, and I did split them for like 1 to 2 months in each. I did, for example, Western Kyushu, I did Tohoku region, I did Hokkaido, and within each of these regions I just picked up maybe 1 or 2 places. I googled, what kind of interesting events are there, what kind of interesting places, cultural assets are there, and basically I just created like a small itinerary that way. Now they only need this for the actual visa process. You don't have to follow this itinerary at all. You can stay in one place for the 12 months, but you cannot say that during the interview process, because that is seen as really bad and that might get your visa cancelled or just declined. So I would always, even if you're intending of staying for 1 year in Tokyo, just make sure that you got this kind of itinerary written down point by point, place by place, so that it shows that you have an intent of traveling and that you are not just there to stay in Tokyo for 12 months and become a NEET staying in your own apartment all the time. And the itinerary also, it has a template that you can use, but you can also write it down on your own kind of, you can do like an Excel sheet, you can do a Word document, whatever. I would again recommend doing both. Now another thing that you will need is a visa application form. On that form you can find different details. That is, you will need this visa form for any kind of visa that you need to Japan, but you will basically have to write down your address, your home address. You will have to write down when you have been in Japan before, for how long, and a lot of these details. Now, 2 mistakes that I made in that application process. As I am living in Austria, however, I'm also kind of registered in Slovakia, I wrote down both addresses, which was seen as bad. It wasn't that horrible, but he said that that is quite a mistake that I should not have done. Live in one country and you are applying for a visa, for a working holiday visa from another country, only mention that address for that country that you're applying to and not the actual other address, even though it is written that you should name all addresses. Yeah, I guess you should not do that. So that's one tip. And the other tip is that it is written that you need kind of a guarantor or like a guarantee person in Japan, but you don't actually have to fill it out, I was told. So I wrote down the mother of my girlfriend as kind of like a guarantor. You have to write down their name, their address, their phone number, what kind of work they do, what position. It's a lot of details, but you don't have to actually fill that in. So if you do not know anybody in Japan, so don't worry, don't despair, because you don't really have to fill that in. I learned afterwards. Now, the next thing that you will need is a motivational letter. That is basically just a 1-page A4 written statement as to why you want to work and travel in Japan for that long of a duration. So it should include your interests in Japan. What kind of stuff do you like? Do you like food? Do you like the history? Do you like anime? Whatever works for you, or whatever. I would be truthful in this part, because if they question you about, I don't know, if you write down something like, I'm heavily interested in Shinto Buddhism, and then during the interview somebody asks you questions about that and you just stare blankly at them, that's not gonna look good. So I'll just be honest. You are going to Japan, so there is going to be some kind of interest there. I wrote down that I want to make videos in Japan, that I want to explore the culture, I like the architecture, stuff like that. And one mistake that I did when writing the motivational letter was that I don't know exactly what I wrote, but I wrote something that contradicted what I wrote in the itinerary. So the embassy person actually pointed it out to me. And it wasn't a problem in the end, because again, he said that as long as the whole package is balanced, such mistakes can be in the application process, but they don't matter that much in the end. Now, for the proof of funds, you will need a bank statement. So I just went into my online banking and I printed the last 3 months of all my transfer funds. In the end, they ended up only needing like the latest 1 page, so the latest month. So if you do not necessarily have the funds that you do have right now, what you can do is you can maybe ask some friends or your family to transfer you the money temporarily, and it might go through. Like, they might not require all those 3 months that they normally do, but they might actually require those. So I would just maybe try to get something else, just your bank stating that you have $4,000 instead of having to show proof of the last 3 months. Otherwise there's going to be a transfer of like $3,000 or 4,000 euro or something, and that will kind of be embarrassing. The last thing that you should keep in mind is that your passport for the duration of the visa application will be at the embassy. So you will not have a passport for that duration of time. So if you maybe need your passport number or something, you need that kind of identification, I would definitely make a copy, or maybe copy or two, keep them in different places, so that maybe if you need the passport in that duration, normally it should take maybe 1 or 2 weeks until the visa is done. If you do end up needing your passport for that duration or during that duration, it's always good to have a copy. So this will obviously depend, but at least in Slovakia, the people at the Japanese embassy were very friendly. They were helpful with the entire visa application process. They were giving me some tips for life in Japan, as in how do I get a bank account, how do I get a insurance, how do I register once I'm in Japan. I'll do a video on that once I'm actually in Japan, and how to do the whole registration once I have that done. But once the visa application process is handed in, you have to wait for sometimes 1 week, sometimes 2 weeks. It really depends. Sometimes it's 3 weeks. My girlfriend had to wait 3 weeks there was a visa for Austria, but she still had to wait for 3 weeks. But afterwards you just go back to the embassy. They hand you your passport that has the visa inside, and that's gonna be it. In Slovakia, I had to kind of activate the working holiday visa within 3 months from when it was granted. So I think I have to use it by mid-December. I'm flying out at the end of November, so that's enough time. But I don't know how it is in other countries. I'm assuming it's probably the same. So make sure that you don't apply too early or too late either, because if it's too late, you are not gonna make your flight without a passport. And you will also receive some further information as to how to register at the municipal office, and also how you can actually leave Japan with a working holiday visa, because you can actually do that now. They changed that rule recently, that you can actually just fly out easily from Japan to, say, a trip to Korea or Taiwan or China or Hong Kong or something. But that's as far as the visa application process goes. It's really not that difficult, as long as you have all your files together. You just go there, you just hand them in, and you're done in less than an hour. So it's really just a lot of preparation that might seem a bit exhausting to do, but once you have that done, the visa process goes very smoothly, and you will get your visa pretty soon. And as I said, I will do a proper video on all of the things that you have to do in Japan, how to register, how to get your national ID card, how to do all of the other things like health insurance and stuff once I'm in Japan next month. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, there's gonna be a lot more videos on kind of living in Japan, moving in Japan, traveling in Japan. If you like that kind of content, please subscribe, like the video, share it if you have some friends that wanna go on a working holiday visa or maybe thinking about going on a working holiday visa. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.